Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream we build Python and Django applications to put them on the web, software as a service. We're going to continue on a project that I've been building. This is part 11 of my journal service here, which is as a reminder for those joining back again, is a journaling service meant to work through email as the interface. So we're going to send emails out to people, they're going to send it back to the service, and we're going to keep a journal for them. And the interesting hook is that every time we send them an email, we're going to include a past entry so they have some reminder of what they've done in the past. So that's the project that we're building out. You are free to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. We're on our way towards launching the service live on the internet. We've last time hooked up a bunch of email stuff to send outbound. And John, good to see you. Thank you for coming back. And today we're going to focus our attention on inbound email, coming the other direction. So that's what's on the docket for this evening. There's a little bit of cleanup that I want to do before going to that though. So last time in the process of working on our email testing, we found a bug in the way that I was representing some data, and we cleaned it up in the HTML template. And then after I got through the stream, I realized, oh shoot, I didn't actually do this for the text version of the email. So we need to duplicate that work there and clean up the humanize library that we're using. So those are things that we're going to clear out and make them compatible with what we had with the HTML version. And then we'll jump into the SendGrid configuration for inbound email, setting up webhooks, and digging into that. It should be interesting because I've never actually done any of this part myself. So it's going to be interesting to see what it means to configure and test this and have confidence that it's going to work. I don't know if it's going to mean that we have to deploy to Heroku this evening. We might play around with ngrok. There's going to be all sorts of interesting possibilities here that we'll have to explore together. So let's jump into it. Let me bring up my terminal. It's been a little while. And somewhere along here is, I think maybe my computer restarted in the interim too. No, there it is. Okay, this is an old API key. I went back and deleted this. So even though you're seeing this visibly now, this is what the key looked like last time we were testing this, but I had it for testing purposes. So this should not be usable by anybody today. But you can get a sense of this is what we were doing last time. So I might have to create another key for testing this evening, depends on what we're gonna see. So I probably, in reality, should have looked at this file beforehand and closed this file, but thankfully nothing is insecure there. It's all good. So we need to go to the text file of our template. So let's open up our template section and go to the prompt, and I'll bring up the HTML version, and I'll also bring up the text version side by side. We can compare them. The thing that we took out last time is we were using this natural day functionality from the humanize library, the template tags that come as a contributed package to Django itself. And what we had found when we saw the test email is that it really just wasn't the right format. It's not what we intended. And so instead we switched it to some of the inbuilt template tags using this time since tag instead. That's what's over here. So what we need to do today is make sure two things. We need to make sure that the stuff that we're rendering for the text template also has the date provided. And then we need to, in addition, come into the template itself and modify these couple little lines to remove humanize and then switch this tag here. So those are the main things. Let's go to the job where this is being sent out and see if the context is actually correct. I would suspect it is, but we should check anyway. So it's the same context for both the text and the HTML version, which last time we had to add this today variable. So we have confidence that what's going to be present in the template will be today. So that means that we can switch here and we can get rid of this load humanize because we're not going to need any template tags from there. And then we can go to this this natural day line here, and we can switch it from natural day to time since, and we can provide a colon, which is kind of a way with template tags to say when you have arguments of what to do, and we give it today as the argument. So you can view this how should you view this? This is a filter. So the filter is going to work on this piece of data, this when, which is a date time. And you can think of it as flipping around like a function that takes 2 arguments is maybe the easiest way to think of that. If I were to write this more in like a function style, you might think of it as a time since with the entry dot when and today as the 2 arguments. Now that's not really how it works syntactically, but you can conceptually think of it that way and it's going to produce a result that is the actual thing that we want to see. So that should be it. We can come over here and run our test and make sure everything is working fine. It should be. Everything should render okay. We still have 100% cover, so that's good. So that's kind of the extent of that change. There's one more thing that I think we have to do, and that is find humanize. And there's since we're not using humanize in any way anymore, we can remove it from our included apps, which should not. I mean, it's not going to make a big material change to this, but it should clean things up a little bit. John, I'm seeing your comment about rough. Oh yeah, cool. You switched to it and it was much faster. You know, that's funny you mentioned that because I got a comment on Mastodon from Will Vincent. So Will Vincent is actually a well-known Django developer and author of many resources. And he mentioned actually this stream and this project and said, "Why aren't you using rough?" And I'm like, well, I just haven't set it up yet. So I think maybe a future stream would be really good to incorporate that into this project because I do think it would simplify things considerably. We've got Flake and we've got, well, that's the primary one, but rough, for those that don't know, is a tool that is for doing linting stuff, but it's written in Rust. So it's like blazingly fast. And if I can configure some things to use it in my setup here, it would be a good tool to have. In fact, the comments that I heard about it is it's so fast that people had to like put in errors just to make sure that it was actually working. They weren't convinced that it was working because it seemed like nothing happened because it runs in the order of like milliseconds. So that's pretty impressive. So I'm glad you had a good experience with it. I haven't introduced this project yet because I want 2 things to happen. First, I want to have like the minimum viable project out there and working and see like the whole loop going. So we're close, but not there yet. And then the second thing that needs to happen in order to get this working is I need to incorporate rough into my editor. I need to understand the configuration. I need to incorporate it into pre-commit, and I need to incorporate it into continuous integration. And once those 3 things are true, then I can have it. And so that would be a good thing. It would probably take less like maybe an hour to do, but if I'm only doing this a couple hours per week, then those hours are kind of precious. All right, so you know what though? Let me actually, before I forget about it, let me record it as something to switch to. Blah 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 blah. Let's add or replace Flake 8 with rough. I think that's the name of the tool. So that way we won't forget about this in the future. Okay, we can return to our little launch milestone. And so this is the one I was just working on. It was a quick change, but I didn't want to forget about it. Let's see what our diff now looks like. Okay, really just 3 lines, so not a ton going on there. Remove, humanize, and fix text email prompt. And this fixes number 35. It's funny how fast these numbers add up. I was actually just looking at my homeschool project, and it's getting close to 1,000 items in there. A couple of years of that stuff will really accelerate things. We're not there yet. This project is much newer than that, so there's a lot of opportunity here to like build on stuff. Okay, so we're ready, I think, to switch gears to the inbound. And let me bring up my diagram here. This is the very rough architecture diagram that I have, is for those that haven't seen it, that models in broad strokes how this is going to work. So there's an arrow right here that is sending email. There's a management command that's making API calls. It's sending email content that should go out to all the users of this site, and it sends it to SendGrid. And then SendGrid does the actual work of sending real emails. That's what this arrow is right there. So the email prompt is this up arrow, okay? And then when somebody responds, they're responding with their journal entry that they want for a particular day. So that's the response back to SendGrid. But SendGrid can't get this Heroku scheduler because this is like private within Heroku. So we needed another mechanism in order to actually get the data back into our service. So we can configure SendGrid to send to a URL of our choice, known as a webhook. And SendGrid, for every email that it receives, can call that webhook with a set of data and come into our main web application. So the application deep in this core here is going to define the webhook, is going to receive the data. And when it receives that data, I'm guessing that we will do some validation and make sure that it's like a real message that we can trust. And there's probably comments on how to do that because that's important. I want this whole app to be secure because this is like journal stuff, and I don't want people getting spam in their journals from me being lazy and not configuring all the security right. So we're going to do that. And once that hook exists, we can actually record each journal entry for that person into the database, and that'll be their permanent record there. And then there's probably a little bit of correlation that we have to do to make sure that the dates line up. But that's a detail that we can get to once we get the hook going. John, looking at your comment. Oh, good. Pre-commit was easy. All right, glad to hear it. That'll be good fun when we get to it, maybe a couple of weeks or something. All right, so let's take a look at what it's going to take to get this hook going. So what I would like to use is something provided by Anymail. So as a reminder for folks or folks joining new, we have a layer in place that we're not actually making direct API calls to SendGrid here. Instead, what we're using is a tool called Django Anymail, which acts as an email backend. So Django makes it configurable to pick which kind of backend you want for email. So you can write your own for a different service, but Anymail takes that one level further and makes it work with multiple different vendors here. So we've got this configured to use Anymail and work with SendGrid. And we've already done that work, and we tested that outbound stuff. We saw that very directly. I showed you the email that was on my phone. So we know that portion is working, assuming we've got all the API keys right. So the next thing we need to do is get into these additions about receiving email. So here's the section for Anymail that's here, but let's look at the receiving mail section. And we might have some specific SendGrid options. So we'll return to this in a little bit. Let's focus our attention on receiving mail. And we're going to read through documentation together. That's just a reality sometimes of this stuff. See how this works. So for ESPs that support receiving inbound email, that is, SendGrid is one such vendor. Anymail offers normalized handling of inbound events. Okay, so you can in theory switch between vendors if you wanted to, and you wouldn't have to change the code. The likelihood that I'm switching off of SendGrid is close to 0, but not non-zero. Not zero. If you didn't set up webhooks when first installing Anymail, you'll need to configure webhooks. That's a link, so let's open that. To get started with inbound email, should also review securing webhooks. We want this to be secure. So, okay. Once you've enabled webhooks, so maybe we should stop here. Well, let's read the sentence. Once you've enabled webhooks, Anymail will send an inbound custom Django signal for each ESP inbound message it receives. Okay, so it's using a signal dispatch method as a process. So what this tells me is that Anymail is the provider of a Django view, and we're not like writing any hook method inside of the view and have to follow some convention. Instead, they're using the signal system And the signal system within Django lets you react to all sorts of kind of events synchronously. These aren't like off on their threads, so it's important that the processing be fast. And so you define what you need as an inbound hook, and you process the data. Okay, cool. That's a pretty sensible way to go about this. And we'll figure out where to put this later in our app. But let's read these next couple pages about doing configuration and securing this stuff. Okay. An email can optionally connect to your ESP's event webhooks to notify your app of status tracking, which I don't really care about, and inbound message events. That's the one we do care about if you're set up to receive email through your ESP. Skip this section if you won't be using an email's webhooks. Well, I'm not skipping that because the kind of the reason that we exist. Warning. Webhooks are ordinary URLs and are wide open to the internet. It's true. You must use care to avoid creating security vulnerabilities, okay, that could expose your users' emails and other private information or subject your app to malicious input data. All right. So at a minimum, your site should use HTTPS, and you should configure a webhook secret as described below. All right. So let's take that in turn. HTTPS is going to come from Heroku. We're going to be paying for Heroku, and Heroku adds automatic certificate generation for our domain as long as we're paying for it. In fact, since they made their changes and no longer have a free tier, I'm sure this is just something they offer as one of their features because everybody gets it even at the lowest level of the service. So that is where we'll get that from. We'll have a little tiny bit to do within Django itself, and we've already gone through the security checklist and have set up the default settings so that everything assumes HTTPS by default. So we shouldn't have anything additional to do. When I walked through this a couple streams ago, when we went through the deploy checklist, we actually made it configurable. And then in my development environment, I switch it to an insecure mode because I don't want to deal with certificates locally with development. So production should be set to go from the HTTP perspective. Check that off in your head. The next thing we need to do is configure a webhook secret as described below. See securing webhooks for additional information. All right, let's continue going down the rabbit hole before we get any further, although it looks like it might just be this, which I think we'll have to do through some configuration. All right. Securing webhooks. They're going to repeat the information that we can create vulnerabilities. Okay. At minimum, you should use HTTP in a shared authentication secret. Aha. Okay. So this is probably going to be something that we can put in our app and then also go over to SendGrid and put in the same secret. And I presume what will happen is that whenever SendGrid is sending us the email payload, they'll include the secret that we configured, and there can be some checking to make sure that those two values are equal. And then we'll have some confidence that like nobody else should have that shared secret. Therefore, this must be coming from them, assuming that SendGrid is not compromised, and my site's not compromised. Okay. Your Django site must use HTTPS. Yep, we do that. Well, local testing, this might be funny. So we'll see how we get around with this, if it's going to complain. I'm not really worried about it on local testing because this isn't live yet. No one can hack my machine, and we'll just be using some dummy data. So yeah, not too concerned here, but we'll definitely make sure we do the right thing when it's time to go live. Without it, the data your ESP, that's email service provider, sends your webhooks is exposed in transit. So you can kind of think of HTTPS as like secure tunnel, like nobody can see inside of it, like a tube that is completely opaque. And so that's versus HTTP would be like I mean, let's use a really stupid analogy of plastic tubes. HTTP is like a clear plastic tube that anything going through it, you see exactly what's going through. So if you got fish swimming through it, you'd see that there are fish going through the clear plastic tube. Whereas if you had HTTPS, it would be totally opaque, and you would not be able to see whatever's going through it, whether it's fish or mice or I don't know, I'm being ridiculous, but I don't know why I thought of having animals go through a tube. Whatever, hopefully the idea makes sense. That's what HTTPS is doing, is preventing anybody from seeing the traffic and eavesdropping on what's going through as it's in transit. That just means as it's transmitted across the internet. So this data can, and the reason, here's why we want to do this critically, it can include your customers' email addresses. So that would be really bad to let our customers' email addresses just kind of leak on the internet and be collected by spammers and all that sort of stuff. So to have a good reputation with my customers, I want to be able to secure this. There's also the aspect of, hey, this is going to be somebody's journal data. So we don't exactly, not that I envision my service becoming, everybody on the internet's journal and being this massive store of very private data. But even if it's a small pool of customers, I want them to have confidence that I respect their data and keep it private. So that's another reason to use HTTPS everywhere. All right, so it's beyond the scope of this, and I've already mentioned very directly now that Heroku is going to provide this for free. I'm sure under the covers, well, I'm not sure. I would suspect that they are using Let's Encrypt to make that work. But actually, that might not be right. I think Heroku might be built on top of Amazon, and Amazon has, or Amazon AWS, and Amazon has a certificate manager service. So it might be coming from Amazon. Okay, so all this to say, that's the reason why we're doing this. Hopefully that's clear to people. Okay, they're kind of rehashing what I was saying earlier. Is like we want. They've got all these good reasons that why we don't want to have this being just on the open internet. And this is so the other the shared secret thing is nice. This is the point about overwhelming your database with garbage data. So you think of it this way: anytime, let's say a spammer is they do find my webhook, and they are hoping to give me a bunch of malicious data. I'm not even going to make up a scenario. You can think of plenty of scenarios where this might happen, where somebody wants to create spam and get you to click on links or something. But having that shared secret is going to allow the webhook to still listen for anything, but as soon as the shared secret doesn't match, it just drops it, throws away the message, saying like, no, that's not allowed. So that's the benefit here. And let's read about it just to make sure. So a webhook is an ordinary URL. Anyone can post to it. You should use a shared random secret that your ASP can present with the webhook data. This is part of the payload. Most ESPs recommend using HTTP basic authentication. Okay. Anymail includes support for this via the Anymail webhook secret. Basic usage is covered in the web. Okay. So it sounds like it will configure the webhook secret might need to be a certain format in order to make it look like a certain type of authentication. Basic authentication is one of the built-in forms of authenticating on the web. So with every request, you can include a little bit of information like a username password kind of thing, which is why it's called basic. And that can store your token that you're going to have on both sides. So if someone posts to your webhook without the required shared secret as part of this, and it's going to be stored in this authorization header, then Anymail will raise this error, which is a subclass of suspicious operation. Oh, I wonder if that would show up, because we're eventually going to use Sentry as well, which I believe I already configured. So I wonder if that would show up with Sentry if they're going to as an error. Wouldn't hope so, but who knows? Okay. In addition to a single random : random string, you can give a list of authenticated strings. An email will permit webhook calls that match any of the authenticated strings. Okay. Why would you want this? Any guesses? Why would you want multiple strings here? Why multiple webhook secrets? Answer may not be obvious. And then, why is there a colon? Why is there a colon in the string? This is like a learning opportunity for those that don't know. I think I have the answers. And if I don't, you all can check me on it. So, well, yeah, you could just read, and then I look silly. So it's about rotation, and rotating is periodically you might want to change the secret, or if you think your data was compromised for some reason, but you still want to. Here's a scenario that might happen. Like, imagine your site gets compromised, and somehow you leaked your secrets and you leaked your shared key, and you need to change it, but you need to change it while you might still have emails coming in from SendGrid. And how do you synchronize those things? So by having multiple that appear here, you can tell the webhook to say, like, I'm going to accept this or this. So there's a time period where you create the new one, you add it to your list, and your site is now ready to receive either. And at that point, you can go into SendGrid and switch the configuration from one value to the next value. So if any emails were sent during that time, it can respond to the old value. And as soon as you switch, if any emails are sent after you make that configuration change, it can also accept the new value. So it's this ability to seamlessly, without any downtime, do that. AM, welcome. Thank you for joining the regulars. Appreciate that. Yeah, thanks for being a member. So we've got this concept now of the ability to rotate webhook secrets, which is a really powerful thing that hopefully we don't have to use that very much. But let's talk about the colon aspect. Did they mention why it's a colon? I'm trying to look through here. And yeah, they just tell you why you would want to rotate this. So the colon is an aspect of basic auth. So that's what we can learn about this. And let's see, let's actually go check this out. HTTP basic auth. Let's see if we can search for colon. The idea is, like, it's one half of the basic authentication is the username, and the other half is the password. And the colon character is the separator between the two. So they're doing that. But then, there is an aspect in the specification here that it takes this user password combination, and then it does something called base 64 encoding. And base 64 encoding is not a cryptographically secure way of doing anything. It's just a way to ensure that there are no special characters that appear in the output. We don't have time to dig into base 64 encoding, but it's a 100% reversible operation that's very trivially easy to do. So even if you took this information of user :password and then you put it into base 64 and got this output string that looks like it might be secret, just know that it's not. It's just a way to translate the data from one format into a slightly safer format for computers, and then translate it back when you're ready to interpret it for its real values. So I'm kind of curious that they don't mention base 64 encoding here. So they must just be assuming, like, we're going to do the base 64 encoding for you. Don't worry about that. And the same might be true of SendGrid. I haven't actually looked at SendGrid's side. Okay, so that's all the details here. Maybe there's another level. And I want this to be really secure. Like, like I said, when I talked about, I'm using a different service that is doing this, the same kind of journaling concept of sending with email. And they've had outages where I've seen their stuff end up in spam, and I suspect what happened to them is they lost reputation for some misconfiguration. So wherever there are secure options here, I want to sign up for all of them. So we're definitely going to do HTTPS. We talked about it. We're definitely going to do the shared secret thing. We're going to figure that out. And then we're also going to do anything else that might be here. So if there is signed webhooks, some ESPs implement webhook signing. So we should inspect that. Supported ESPs. Oh, that's just going to take me to the supported list. Oh, and then they've got a feature matrix here. Let's check it out. So we've got batch sending, and email send options. So these are kind of output fields that go with each vendor. Batch sending, status and event tracking, inbound, yeah, but it doesn't say signing. So that's not on the table. All right, so where are we going to learn more about that? An email will verify. Oh, maybe they do it automatically, which would be amazing. Some ESPs implement webhook signing, which is another method of verifying the webhook data came from your ESP. An email will verify these signatures for ESPs that support them. Okay. Oh, so it might be in the details of that ESP. So if it's something that we have to do, it sounds like it's going to be somewhere buried in here. So we'll read through this page again in a little bit. And let me see what else is going on here. So we have they keep hammering home the same points. Hopefully you're getting the concept of that these things are not safe, and you have to do work to make them safe. They're used for many different types of inter-site communication, and you can find additional recommendations. Oh. All right. I see. We're going to need to read up on the guarantees here. Rate limiting. So rate limiting is like, let's say the bad guys, whoever the bad guys are, do decide if they find your webhook endpoint, and even though you're dropping all of those requests that might be coming in, they might be sending a ton of them. So rate limiting is a technique that would kind of block it before any processing happens. If it comes from one different IP address too often, you could say, nope, I don't even want to process anything about this. I'm just going to immediately drop it. I don't know how well that will help if the shared secret does that pretty early. So I'm not really sure what the benefit is there. I'd like to see a performance thing. I think from my perspective, I'm not going to worry about that aspect right now. We can watch traffic later and see if it becomes a problem. But I think that's not a security thing. That is some people might argue it's a security thing. That is a long-term performance thing potentially. And I think it would only come into play if the site got really popular. We could, okay, this is a level that's pretty deep of checking IP addresses. There are probably multiple ways to do that. And that's a security thing that I've actually seen implemented at my company before. I'm not going to add it as a launch thing, but I am going to record it as an idea of maybe something that we do. So let's write it as should the webhook use an allow list of IPs from SendGrid? And that's kind of another way of doing the rate limiting thing. Or if you did this, you actually wouldn't need to do the rate limiting thing, because SendGrid might, and a lot of vendors will do this, where they will say, you will only receive traffic from us if it comes from one of these IP addresses. And sometimes they do that as a whole like range using CIDR addresses. But so there's multiple ways to represent that. But you can get essentially you can get a list. And then with the request that comes in, you can check, did this request come from an IP address that was on the list? And if not, well, it must not be SendGrid, because they told us that this is where all of their traffic is going to come from. And that way it's this notion of an allow list here is a very secure, in that sense of like, nobody else can use those IP addresses, and unless they somehow manage to compromise SendGrid, which, while possible, is unlikely. So that's something we could consider to make the webhook even more secure. So there's a lot of considerations here. Apologize for we're not getting into the code as quickly as I thought we might, but these are good things that I think that we should record. They're a good source of ideas that make this make these things valuable to check. We could, I don't know that I like this one very much. Check the webhook's timestamp. That relies on like what is reasonably close. Is it plus 5 minutes, plus 10 minutes? Is it 24 hours? Like, clocks can skew in weird ways, and I don't know that I want to tether the clock on Heroku's machines with whatever the clock on SendGrid's machine is reporting. So I'm not going to do this one. However, this one, this tracking event ID, is a good idea. And specifically, it's talking about double processing. So distributed systems are really hard. And this is effectively what we're talking about, where SendGrid's over there, our site's going to be over here, and it's distributed in nature. Multiple machines talking to each other over a distance is a pretty classic problem in computer science in general. And there's all sorts of things that can go wrong, like when services are down. What does it mean? What are the kind of guarantees that you have between sending a message and all those things? So some ways to deal with this is that it all comes down to these sort of the guarantees that a vendor might provide. And these come with certain different characteristics and trade-offs when to think about. And one of these things that a vendor might say is, you might receive you might receive an event multiple times. So perhaps think of this scenario, like maybe we receive an email from someone, comes to the webhook, and we record an entry for them for that time. And then SendGrid has some kind of problem on their end, and the safest thing for them to do is send out the same kind of webhook notifications again. So you might see the same exact payload, and you could see if this was a problem. Let's say if you were trying to make a count, had some sort of counter every time the webhook got called. I don't know why you do that, but we're just a hypothetical scenario. And that would be a problem if you were only interested in unique events that had occurred. So this idea of using an event ID could correlate, like, which ones have I seen versus not seen. I think we might do something like this, less about the event ID and more about tracking the message ID. So something about the prompts is we're going to need to associate a prompt with a specific date. So when the user responds, if the prompt was for September the 6th and they respond on September the 9th, that we still record their response for their journal entry as something that went with September the 6th. And I've talked about in previous streams how there are going to be multiple ways to do that. But the best and most direct way is, like, if I know at the sending time in the job that sends it that this is the prompt for the 6th, and I send it to SendGrid, and SendGrid gives me back an ID for the message that was sent. If I store those two pieces of data together, so we've got the date that was meant for the send, actually maybe three pieces of data. The date that was meant for the send, the user that it was meant for, and that message ID, then we've got a guaranteed unique pair of all three of those things. And now when the webhook comes back in, we can get the ID, and like it might send an ID back, and we can look up in a table and say, find the tracking record for something that matches this ID. Once we pull it out, we'll have the other two pieces of information with it. Again, the user and that date that it was for. So if the event includes the message ID and the actual journal entry, and then we've got the message ID, the user, and the date over here, now we've got all three pieces of information that actually goes and makes a reliable journal entry, because we've got the content of the entry, we've got the date of the entry from the tracking system, and we've got the user from the tracking system. All three of those, we have a strong guarantee around them. And that way it avoids figuring out identity and checking email, like the email address in case something like that has changed. So that's going to be almost certainly the thing that we need long term. Now, the MVP version of this, like, it's only going to be me. So we have basically zero requirements to check anything, because I will be the only user on the system. So we can be pretty dumb about it initially, but when we want to get better bookkeeping around this, that is certainly the way we want to go. So I'm going to record that if I haven't already. Let me look through here. Maybe it's this one. No, not quite. It's sort of related to this email send tracking. Improve fault tolerance by ensuring that emails actually get sent. Yeah, okay. That feels like this. We'll add some detail here. So with mail ID. And then we'll edit this to say, use the SendGrid, and it's not called a mail ID, it has some specific name, but use the SendGrid mail ID from the API response to ensure that the event received on the webhook matches a prompt that was sent out. All right, I think that's probably enough for me to understand it later. Any questions about this so far? We haven't touched any code, but I've been trying to like lay a lot of design thinking around this, of like how should we be thinking on this. But I think we're getting pretty darn close to actually doing some configuration here. And I've extracted what I think are the valuable things to consider from what they're suggesting here. We could probably also launch without signed webhooks, but so let's punt on this part. Let's see if we can get something up today. I want to record this though, as something post-launch. Does SendGrid support signed webhooks? If so, is any configuration required on the web server? Okay. So we haven't forgotten about it. We'll do our diligence on it later. The thing that we minimally need is a shared secret. And I think that allows us to pop up out of this page, come back to this inbound webhook configuration stuff. So what we need, they might explain why we want or what the colon's deal is here. We need to populate this webhook secret thing, and you can see it's a random string colon with another random string. This setting should be a string with 2 sequences of random characters separated by colon. It is used as a shared secret known only to your ESP and your Django app to ensure nobody else can call your webhook. Now, I might put one in there today to let us test that I would then change when I deploy to production. That's something I can't share with y'all. We suggest using 16 characters or more for each half of the secret. Always generate a new random secret for this purpose. Don't use your Django secret key. That's a very good note there. Yeah, you definitely don't want to mess that up. Well, that's a cool little snippet there. So there's Django utils. The utilities package has this crypto thing that wraps up some APIs that you can use. And then they've got a little like one-liner here of getting a random string. And so that'll give us a nice little value to use. All right, so we'll use that in a minute. But let's go set up our settings to have this stuff here. Jump over here, and we want to go to the bottom where AnyMail is, right here. And we're going to add a new thing of webhook secret, right? Yep, webhook secret. And this is going to be an environment variable that will have, it will be required. So I'm not going to define it up the top of the file, but I'm going to give it a slightly different name here. I'm going to namespace it with AnyMail to AnyMail webhook secret. And that should give us, in case there are other webhooks in the future, I don't imagine there will be in this project, but just to be complete here. And then we'll go to the env example file, close that. And now we've got, at the top here, we can do AnyMail webhook secret equals random 16 colon random 16. And then I can leave a comment to give me a reminder. The webhook secret expects a loose basic auth format, no base 64 encoding. Okay. So at this point, we can take this value and go up to that env file. And again, if anybody's joining later, there's this old SendGrid API key in here, but I've deleted that on my account, so that's useless. So don't bother going and trying to send a bunch of emails. It's not going to do anything. I would just appreciate you not doing that anyway, but just in case you're like, hey, I can get some free emails. So let's take this line. It's a pretty cool. I don't use this technique much, but it's a pretty cool thing when I see it done. To use Python and use the -c argument, kind of executes everything in a single line. And we can go, should be able to go like this. And right there, awesome. So we can take this little line and drop this into our env file right here. And so this value here, this DJ, hey, how fitting, DJ Django. DJ blah, 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 3H blah, 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 is the thing that we would want to put into SendGrid. That's our webhook now. And at this point, we should be able to run the test suite, and everything should still run. Although now that I'm thinking about that, we also need to update CI because it will not run without that value. So we need to put in something here. So we need to define AnyMail webhook secret, and then say random 16, random 16. I don't have to say that, I'm just choosing to. to give it something to look at. So now when we actually push up this change, CI won't blow up in our face. Otherwise it's going to say like, hey, I didn't find this environment variable. All right, returning to the configuration. So this setting is actually an HTTP basic auth string. We talked about that. I'm surprised they don't mention the base64 stuff. Maybe they just assume people are not going to look. All right, this is a key aspect of this. We need to add any mail to our paths now. So this is actually what's going to define the URL that will be accessible when we launch the application. So let's go to our URLs file. And here, let's get rid of this comment. I don't need this comment. I know how Django URLs work. I'll keep it nice and short. And right here, we can say any mail. Didn't have to be this, but I'll just be consistent with the documentation. So we've got anymail.urls. Part of me would like to not expose every type of webhook. I don't know. All right, because I'm curious. Let's go check it out. Let's go look at the code. Django anymail. I want to see it. I want to see it on GitHub. I should just click the edit page there. So let's go look at anymail itself and look at their URLs file. See what they do. I would hope. No, they don't. Boo. It would be nice if there was detection of, you're only using SendGrid. Therefore, the only URLs we're going to include are the SendGrid URLs. But instead, what's happening here is not that. It's instead providing all of these things. So every vendor is possible. So if we look at all of our routes later, in fact, actually, maybe we can see this now. There's a command called manage. It comes, well, I think it's in Django extensions. Let's take a look. So here's our Django extensions package. And notice there's this command right here, show URLs, which is pretty cool. So now that we have that route thing configured, if we run this, we're going to see, we're going to see a bunch of stuff. So we've got Amazon SES, MailerSend, Mailgun, Mailjet, Mandrill, Postal, Postmark, SendGrid, Sendinblue, Spark Posts, blah, 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 blah. So the question, part of me is wondering, should I be explicit about only including the two SendGrid? And maybe I only even need not the tracking, the inbound one. Like I might be able to get away with a single view. Maybe it's not worth fretting about now, but in the future I might want to trim it down. And so just keep that in mind of like there's a that's how I'm thinking about those URLs. Harrison, what problem does Anymail solve? Anymail makes it possible to not have to use specific libraries to when you're sending email. So the Django has a mail interface. Actually, rather than going to the documentation, let's just bring it up. So we saw this with the job that we're doing to send an actual email. So one of the things that it solves is Django has this, where to go? This mail API here called send mail. And that's going to hook up to your email backend. And your email backend could be an SMTP server. It could be lots of things. But AnyMail provides email backend. So if you want to do outbound mail sending to somebody and you want to use one of the ESPs, then AnyMail is like acting as the go-between between using the native Django API and the vendor of your choice, in which case it's SendGrid for me. The other thing that we're also going to use that you'd have to do yourself, and this is going to be dependent per vendor, is how do you respond to requests with webhooks coming back in? And AnyMail provides inbound message handling. And that is something that also could be done with SendGrid APIs directly, but there's a bunch more configuration and validation that you'd have to do. So that's what AnyMail is really solving for us here. Hopefully that is makes sense to you. Okay. So we're gonna not mess with the URLs. Maybe someday we'll just trim it down. But I was hoping I'd come in here and see some cooler logic that would show like only including the things that were needed. That was what I was hoping to see, but unfortunately not. Quietly welcome. Good to see you again too. Working on inbound email tonight. The plan is what we're working through right at the moment. Okay, so we're at this point where we've got our new inbound route. Yada, yada, yada. You can change the prefix. Yeah, so you could call it something else. And then, all right, here's where we're getting into SendGrid stuff. So I'll probably have to sign into SendGrid and put it in secure mode for a minute and make sure I get to the right place. Oh man, this is gonna be tricky. So we have not deployed yet. So all that we've configured right now is AnyMail. Yeah. We've configured this piece right here, and then we've got available ESP and type. And so we can actually, we'll try and run it and see what happens. So if we run the server, I'm just curious what will occur if we even attempt to go to that route. It probably won't accept it at all because it's a post request. So it's going to be like a, I predict it'll be a 403, or is it 405? Which one's message not supported? So if we go to localhost and then go to AnyMail, that's where we wanted to put everything. And then we wanted to put in SendGrid, because that's our vendor. And then we want inbound. And you have to include this trailing slash. But this is a GET request because this is just in the browser. It's not a post. So it's probably going to say 405. Or just nothing at all. Oh, interesting. What did it say? Network. Reload. All right, 405. What I thought. And did it have any response at all? Nope, no response. Okay. So cool, pretty secure. In the sense of it's not exposing any information that you might learn anything from it. So this is the route that we want, but we don't have a site deployed anywhere yet. So how can we test an email? I mean, first of all, there's a couple assumptions I'm making. There's an assumption that SendGrid gives you web tools where you can say test the webhook. They may not do that. So maybe we should check that first. But let's say they do offer that. What we can do in that case is use a very cool tool. And that tool is called ngrok. So ngrok is a tool that the idea about the ngrok is that sometimes you need a temporary public name that you can use to test your local application. And in this case, we could say ngrok, and then whatever the command might be, there's a couple different attributes you have to provide, like port number, and it sets up a connection where ngrok provides the public name of, I don't remember what their names are. They vary and they're not stable. But they're meant for a short time, where I could start ngrok and it would start listening to my local web server would listen and be connected to that public name, so that if I gave you the URL, you could start making requests that would come through ngrok, through the internet, and ngrok running on my machine would receive the traffic from their main server, however that's configured, and then it would send it to my local web server and actually handle requests. My local web server on this machine right here would then send the data back through the public IP address or the public name and get back to you. ngrok should be able to serve this scenario of testing this out, assuming that we can actually get SendGrid to send some kind of test event. What I'd love to see is some kind of traffic that actually appears on the server that is showing that we've connected everything. That would be cool. All right, so let's, and we don't have to sign up for ngrok, although we might have to install it. Yeah, AMU and I are on the same wavelength on this. ngrok should do the job. It's pretty awesome. Let's see if I have, let's first start by seeing if I have it installed. Harrison, that's very kind. You know, we're all newbies at one point in time. So my philosophy around this stream, just so you're aware, is like, this is me working on a real world app. I'm someone who I've been working with Django since 2014 now, so I have many years of Django experience. So I'm just further along on my journey than you are, and I think everybody is capable of getting, you know, some level of proficiency after they've spent time. You know, if you spend 7 years on anything, right, you should hopefully be pretty decent at it. But the goal of this is to like show the whole life cycle of making something for real online. So this might be overwhelming to you as someone who's new. Feel free to ask questions. Looks like you're not afraid to ask them already, so I appreciate that. But if you have any other questions that you want me to try and explain, I'd be happy to take some time to do that. All right, let's check if I've got ngrok installed. Nope. Okay, so let's go brew install ngrok. Hopefully this is not a mistake and that brew doesn't try and upgrade the whole world, because then we're gonna have a whole little bit of fun. But we'll let that run in the background. Yeah, it's gonna run for a while, maybe. Oh, wow. You're just going for it already. Sometimes it just hangs. Okay, cool. Let's let that run. And then let's go to SendGrid. I don't think I'm still gonna be signed in here. Hopefully not, actually, because I just realized that you might be seeing a bunch of personal information there. So what I'm going to do is put up my secrets page, which I still have not fixed to be anything cooler to look at. It's going to be a black screen, but you can hear me. I've got the SendGrid page up. It was not logged in, so I'm going to go ahead and log in to SendGrid. And I'm hitting the login button. And I got to put in my two-factor stuff, so I got to pull out my phone and do all that. So I'm looking at the SendGrid code here on my app and getting that stuff plugged in. And I didn't have the box selected, so none of that input actually went anywhere. I'm hitting continue. Okay, I'm on my dashboard. And I'm looking around to see if there's anything that I need to hide here. And it's just got my name, which you all know anyway because you're on YouTube, and my YouTube channel is my name. Let's bring this back up. Okay, so now we're on the SendGrid screen. Yeah, Harrison, you're right. It's a black screen. I really need to make something that is appealing and let people know it's meant to be just I can't show you my screen right now kind of thing because it's secrets and stuff. So I suspect that the thing that we need to be looking for is probably somewhere in this settings section, but I don't know exactly where to go from here. Inbound parse, maybe? The other part is like each one of these links, I don't know what's safe to show in terms of what you could or couldn't see. So I'm going to go back to the secrets mode again. Apologies, y'all. This is the downside of showing you every bit of doing this. Like with my last app, I was able to do some of this offline and just set these things up. And it's like, I don't know if you ever watch Julia Child, where she's got like somebody has prepared all of her vegetables for her in advance, or they advance a couple of hours. There's already been something in the oven, and you don't think about any of that stuff. That's what my other project was like. But this time we're doing it all in real time. This inbound parse seems to be the right location. Okay, let me bring this back. And there's no secrets here, so let me back out from this little form. So I went here to inbound parse, which I am presuming to mean like we want to parse that data on our side. And judging by the way that this is phrased, I think it's probably what we want. So we click the button here to add this and add host and URL. So email sent to any address in the receiving domain will be processed by inbound parse and posted to the destination. Yeah, this is exactly it. This is a webhook. So I can pick my domain, Journey Inbox, and I don't think I need to pick a subdomain, because I think I'm going to have this live on the root. That's part of why I got Cloudflare's, the Cloudflare DNS, which they support, sometimes called naked domains, but it's essentially the things you're familiar with, where you go to, I was going to say Twitter, but I guess that's now X, where it's twitter.com and you don't see a www in front of it or anything. That's considered a naked domain. So that's what I want to do with Journey Inbox. Just keep it nice and short. Each subdomain combination must be unique. Only authenticated domains may be used. We did authenticate. That's cool. So they trust us here, which tells me right off the bat this is probably not going to work for local testing, because they're only going to send to journeyinbox.com. That's unfortunate. So what I would have done here, just to finish it off, is anymail. Whoops, got to spell it right. Anymail, SendGrid, and inbound. So that's the hook. And check. I don't know why we wouldn't check this. Maybe they're afraid that you like get some data that you shouldn't. And then I don't know. So I think there's some documentation we should read about here, which hopefully this learn more will take us to. Whoops, Twilio, you all failed. 404 from their documentation. All right, we got to search for it differently. SendGrid. I could type inbound parse. Okay. SendGrid is great at sending, yep, but can also help you process inbound. Cool. Let me jump to see if I can find. All right, here we go. Optional, check spam check if you want inbound parse to check incoming email for spam. Checking this box will also include the spam report and spam score in the payload. Oh, AM, that's a clever idea. I do have the Cloudflare set up, so I guess I could. I guess is it worth it for that that's it. You're right. That isn't a way that we could do that. Where we could set up journey inbox at that naked domain to CNAME to the ngrok URL. All of that is true, and it's predicated on us being able to test this out. So let's finish reading these options. Let's create the hook, and then let's see if it has a test button. And then if it does, we can go through with your idea. I like it. Good creative thinking there. And if it doesn't, then well, we'll do some unit testing, and we can test this in other ways that are going to be perhaps imperfect and operate on some assumptions about the data that we're going to receive, and then need to cycle through this after we've actually deployed to Heroku. So yeah, that's kind of where I think we're at. I still am not grokking this this box though. If you want inbound parse to check incoming email for spam, are they saying like send spam to the webhook? Why would you want that? Or am I misreading this? Checking this box will also include, and this is what's making me think it wants to send an actual payload, because they mention checking this box will also include the spam report and spam score in the payload. Okay, I'm going to leave it unchecked for now, and if it becomes a problem, we can update the hook. So what else is here? Check send raw if you would prefer to receive the full MIME message URL encoded in multi-part form data. All right, that is a mouthful. They don't really tell us what the alternative is. So this is a, or do they? Do I need to just keep reading more? If you do not check send raw, the post will be multi-part form data with the email content URL encoded, but the attachments will be, okay, if your code is only set up to read URL encoding, attachments could be dropped. Okay, my service isn't going to care about attachments. I'm not going to support attaching images or anything like that. I don't want to get in the business of content management and setting up S3 buckets, because frankly, like, part of me is like, you could, let's assume the worst customer that I could have. I mean, not from a financial money paying perspective, but just a terrible human being that is writing just horrid journal entries. The worst they could do is write really nasty entries themselves that would be recorded privately. If I supported attachments, the worst they could do is get a whole heck of a lot worse than just nasty text. You can just let your imagination go a little bit there, and you don't have to go very far before you realize, like, whoa, there's a potentially dangerous area that you could get into. Okay. Oh, they're saying, duh. The easiest way to test this out would be to test out an email account sender. That's not shocking. So there's no test button, but we could see the test data show up here. So we should give this, before connecting all this, we should give a little bit of forethought on, we should go ahead and actually hook up the webhook on the app side and have a receiver that's listening, and then maybe have it set up to spit out the information. And then we can go through extra steps of trying out ngrok and all of that. Remember to direct your incoming email to your host name. If you do not, the incoming email will not be parsed. Yep. Can we send it? Oh. To example? Send an email. Could we just use this as the name on the other side? Maybe it doesn't matter. The local part. Oh, they're telling us. Matt, you got to read, dude. The local part, anything before @, can be any word or combination except abuse, postmaster, and unsubscribe, because all email for the domain or subdomain will be processed. Cool. Great. And default parameters. Maybe this is all the stuff that they send in this, but this is going to vary with how AnyMail processes this on the other side. Maybe this comes up as a dictionary. Maybe they put it in some kind of message that you need to read out. Don't really know. Oh, keep reading, dummy. They've got data in here. Oh, what is this format? Anybody recognize that? I don't recognize the format. Is that what URL encoded email looks like? Or multi-part mixed is the content type? If so, that is a new format to me. That's pretty funky. And in that case, I would love if AnyMail processed all this and figured it out on its own. And I don't have to think about it. And if it's normalized all of that into just a dictionary with strings, that would be amazing. Bunch of raw parameters. There's a lot of stuff in here. How do you limit the total size of your messages? Okay, there's so many details that we have to figure out along the way here. There's cryptographic signatures. Now notice one thing I haven't seen in here is anything about webhook signing. Although this looks like a signature. Let's read through this briefly, because I did make that comment of you know, I don't know if that's PHP or not. That's a good question. Yeah, I guess okay. Yeah. Maybe that's is that PHP's associative array syntax? I think it might be. And that, okay, no, now you got me curious. PHP associative array. Look at me for remembering the name of their dictionary structure. I don't know, it's close. I'm not sure if it's exactly that though, because they had like extra square brackets around stuff. Good guess though. It's definitely close. And maybe who knows? PHP is a gnarly language. Not hating on it strongly, but it just has some funky syntax sometimes. Fun fact: PHP was actually the first real language that I used. I used very little of it when I was back in college, but I did. That was the first dynamic content I built on a web page. Was using some raw PHP, mostly to use includes to make sure I wasn't repeating content. Terrible website, but good fun. I'm looking through this list, looking for anything about signing and indicators that there's more extra security that you can get out of this. But I'm not seeing it there. And then let's read down here. There's the parse API. Okay. I think that maybe the webhook signing is not supported by SendGrid, which is fine. I think we have other guarantees with the shared secret that I have high confidence in. Did I also write about the one about IP addresses? Yeah. So while we're here, let's search for SendGrid IP at public. SendGrid public IP address. Let's see if they include that. Here's some PHP. Maybe they thought I was in a PHP mode. Oh, in Python. Will that work? Will I have that? Like, is that like a cookie setting? In which case you were right, AM. Nope. Or at least it refresh. No. Okay. Still whatever that format is. Multi-part mixed. Gotta go look that one up later. Add a Twilio SendGrid IP address. Finds functionality. No, I think this is something different. Okay. We can investigate later. Not the most important thing tonight. So we've got our domain, journey inbox. We've got anymail SendGrid inbound. We've looked at these and I said, no, we don't really need to check that. And I'm not going to support attachments, so I don't think we need to go with that raw format either. I'm going to hit add. And I get a bad request. Maybe it timed out. Boo. I was doing something else for a while, so could be a timeout. Let's try it again. Bad request. Why? Well, this is going to be really sad if my entire project is not going to work because of that. All right. Come on, SendGrid. What's the deal? Try it again. Bad request. We're doing a post settings API. Guessing not many people actually go dig into their actual 400 requests. Are there details? Hey, there's an errors object. Thanks. Bad request. That's the whole error. Sigh. Well, we could try adding some stuff. See if it just let's try it this way. Let's give it a subdomain. See if it'll make it a happy request. Bad request. Okay. Well, that wasn't it. How about they have an example? Oh, you know what they might be doing? They might be trying to validate right now that this exists. Right? I don't know why they wouldn't tell us that, but their little help box here says the URL must be accessible from the public web. Can you think that seems so screwy? Because we want to say, hey, this thing is secure, but I can't secure it until after you let me add it, because there was like one of those options afterwards seemed like the thing for extra authentication. So my guess is that's what's really happening. We're stuck here until we deploy this thing and it's live. That's sad. I think that's what's going on. Let's try it one more time, just for posterity. Anymail SendGrid inbound. Add. Yeah. Okay. Boo. And then I guess I also didn't see shared our basic. Wow. Surely there's a basic auth requirement here that we can use. SendGrid. Inbound parse. Basic auth. Check it out. Oh my goodness. Are they telling me that they don't have support for this in the webhook secret? What? That's hot trash. No way. Ugh. Wow. So we might have to do what this person did and make our shared secret go along with our message. And then, so the idea being here, when we send the request, we attach the shared secret. That's not going to work because the webhook secret is not going to know about that. So we would have to like store it in a setting, and then in our hook, our receiver hook, we would have to actually check that that attribute from the message existed as well, and work around that whole process. That's lame. Oh, you know what it was? No. They did do this. It's just not obvious. They called this out here. Yeah. This is how it will work. By putting, you have to be very careful to put the basic auth in the URL. Okay. So it seems like vendors, they don't explicitly call out what credentials you want to use, or maybe some of them do, but this is the general pattern. All right, never mind. Crisis averted. But we're still stuck. We still can't test this out because we can't actually even create the inbound parse URL. And the only reason I can figure is this comment here of the URL must be accessible from the public web. So the fact that it can't reach Journey inbox, and well, that's one thing, and there's no URL there tells me that's another. Stinker. So we're not going to be able to figure out quite a number of things, actually. Although it probably solves our ngrok problem. Like we could actually, no, that cycle would be really slow. Oh. AM's point might still work. So if, all right, I think I have a way. We've got a way here with ngrok. Here's the idea. Let's continue to use ngrok. Let's set up Cloudflare to point Journey inbox at ngrok. Let's start our web server. At that point, I think we can configure the webhook. Sorry, I blanked out for a minute there. Because what's going to happen in that ad screen, assuming that it is truly what I think of it is, of it needs to be publicly accessible on the internet, is that the webhook would go to journeyinbox.com through Cloudflare, go to ngrok, go to our local web server, find that it's accessible on the public internet, and then allow it to be created, even though we haven't actually deployed it somewhere. So I think that should work. So what we need here is actually I installed this, but it's probably not on the path yet. So let's create a new tab. Sure, you can update humanize. Why not? And then, are we ready to start ngrok yet? Or do we want to actually maybe like use the hook? My thinking is a little scattered on this, and I apologize because if I was more on top of it, I would know exactly what I was hoping to see, but I don't. That's the joy of experimenting together. So we'll continue to use this webhook secret for the moment. We need to find, I want to go ahead and put that hook in place. So this code. And the question is where to put this. In order for the receiver to really be connected to something, it means that this module will have to actually run, right? Well, that may not be evident to you. So if we just have it sitting in a file in views.py, but we never import views.py, then none of this decorator code will actually run. And so the effect will be is that we won't hook up our decorator, or we won't hook up our receiver to actually handle the message. So we have to put this in a place where our code is actually going to run this stuff. And I don't know the best home for that right away. We could make up a home. What do we have? We have currently the core. Okay, so I think what I'm leaning towards is just putting it right in this core views section for now. This is not the right home for it long term. This is just a place that will get imported that we can see. Let me think through. That sounds hacky, to be honest. Seems like there could be a better place to do this, and it's a side effect. So I want to think on this for a minute. Let's actually look. I have an idea in my head, but I don't know if I want to verbalize it yet because it might be a terrible idea. Django receiver definition. Let's see if Django says where it should be concluded. Yeah, that's what I thought we were going to say. So here we are. Okay, here we are. Let's see how we can reformulate this into excuse me, into a way that we want. There's multiple ways to hook into the signal system. And this is not clear that this is a signal, or that this is tied to signals. The only hint here is this actual AnyMail signals right there. So the way this works is you can actually take a signal, and here's an example, Django core signals. There's this setting changed signal, and you can connect to it. So I guess, actually, it might be interesting to go look at the code, or it'd be interesting to me, and I like exploring this stuff. The receiver decorator, what is that doing? So within Django, we've got just dispatch receiver. And if you see how it's built, it takes a signal as the argument here. So the receiver decorator might be doing a little more. If I had to guess, it's going to take whatever signal is passed to it and call signal.connect with the function that it's wrapping right now. So let's see if we can see that, because why not? So we've got our Django clone here for the whole repository. I'm going to open up NeoVim, and we're going to go to Django dispatch, and it's in this dispatcher module with this package, and we've got receiver somewhere in here, def receiver. So you can see that the first argument here is the actual signal, and it does pretty much what I thought it was going to do. There's a little something here. Signal could be multiple signals at once. So that's part of the signature here. That's the second example. But if it's not, all it does is calls signal.connect on the func. And the func, this is a weird way of doing the decorator syntax. I'm not really going to go into the mechanics of a decorator, but just trust me that it's connecting the function to the signal. So we don't have to use the receiver decorator. It's just a convenience method. And in fact, it shows something different from what we would do from in the actual signals documentation. So you can call connect directly if you know what you want. So what I want to do is I want to go into the email app that we have. So there's I guess I put it in the entries app, sorry. We've got our entries app, and that's where I'm putting the job to actually send the email. And for parity right now, we can put the receiver also in this entries section, because the whole point of the inbound hook is to actually create entries. So it feels like a natural fit to me. So here we've got this app config. The app config lives right here. And then app configs can use this hook. Notice that it doesn't exist right now. There's no ready function. But if you define a ready function like this, and it's a method, so it's going to take a self argument, then whatever you put in that method gets called after the app is loaded. So that's a great opportunity to call that signal code, because I told you that you have to actually make that connection so that the signal system is aware of the function that you want to call when a signal fires. So we will connect it here, and that way, whenever the inbound hook receives its data, it's going to do all its parsing and verification and check against the webhook secret and all of that stuff. And at some piece in there, and again, we can go look at the code if we were really interested, it will call the signal and say, is it dispatch? There's a method it calls on the signal function and then provides the data. And then anything that is registered as a connected function then gets its chance to process that data. That's how the signal system works. So we want to say our signal is going to be from, it's going to be this one right here. We're going to copy this and import here and paste this in. So now we've got the AnyMail inbound signal, and we want to say inbound dot connect, and then I'm gonna use the same name that they called it in the AnyMail documentation of just handle inbound. So that's it. That's everything that's needed in order to get this working. Now the problem is that we have not created our handle inbound function. So what we can do is take this chunk of code here without the receiver decorator, notice that, and we need a place for it. So I'm going to go up a level, and I'm going to create a section just for the receiver, and I'm going to call it receivers. I'm going to follow the convention. If you notice within the app that there are multiple things here, they're pluralized. That's why I'm calling it receivers, with the odd chance that we use another receiver in the future. Not terribly likely, but you never know. Okay, so we now have our handle inbound. It exists there, and we can go to our entries apps section, and we need to import it here. So now we can do from dot restart LSP from dot receivers import handle inbound. Okay. So with this much code, what should be happening now is that anytime the inbound hook is called, this handle inbound function is going to fire, and apparently there's some parameters here that we've got. Now I'm curious of what these inbound hooks look like. So let's go check it out, because that could be fun. So we're going to go up and into the journal project, and then we're going to dive into the virtual environment, and there's a lib directory in here, and we're going to go to all of our site packages, and we're going to go into AnyMail. So now we've got, again, I'm going to assume it's in the webhooks directory, and one of these is SendGrid. So let's open that guy up and see what we can find. All right. We've got the, oh, there's a base. Of course there is. So we got the tracking webhook, which don't care about. What we want is the inbound webhook. And there's a bunch of code in here. So it's doing a bunch of parsing. There's ESP name, which they're probably gonna, so this is the fact that I can't find ESP name anywhere else except for these class attributes tells me that the anymail base webhook is going to be the thing that's doing the actual signal calling. So you can see it gets to the bottom and it's probably returning, yeah, it's returning this anymail inbound event and provides all these attributes. So let's go up and go to the base and look for ESP name. Oh, there it is. So here's the code. Here's the, gets the ESP name from the subclass, which was SendGrid. And it gets the signal, which has been connected via the mechanism of the inbound hook. So you can assume that this is the inbound signal for, actually, I think we could see that. Oops. Yeah. You can see that the signal is connected to the inbound signal. So this self.signal property is the inbound signal, and it calls send on that. And then it gives us all of these values, the actual event. We know the ESPA name is going to be SendGrid because that's set up there. And so this is, hopefully all of this is coming together for you, seeing like how everything is actually wired together. There's no mystery here. It's actually pretty clean, which I like. And then the post response coming back to that will be sent back to SendGrid is just an empty response. So they don't care as long as it's a 200, which is what would happen if you do a return an HTTP response like this. It will default to a 200 response, which is what I'm sure what SendGrid is expecting on their side. So that's how all this is wired together, and it means that this event thing that we have here is, well, it looks like it's called multiple times. There might be multiple payloads in here. That's fascinating. But each one will be treated independently because that each one is an individual call to the connected receiver. So over in our definition, we have the event message, and there's probably some stuff we can get out of here, but this is enough to convince us that everything is working right. We could validate from here, and then once that's done, we can. We're not going to get to it tonight. It's already getting close to 11. We're running on close to a couple hours. But if we could test this much out and do the ngrok stuff, and you could see all that wired together and get this going, it will be pretty cool, I think, to see everything happen. There is a bit that I'm not sure about, actually, that makes me think that maybe we can't do the basic auth aspect. And that bit that I'm concerned about is the fact that the domain choice is from a dropdown. You can't just put any old URL in there. Shoot. So we can't do the basic auth checking thing that's in the documentation. Right? Where'd it go? This right here, it assumes that you could provide this whole URL, and we are only given a dropdown to provide this piece, and then we can also provide the URL ourselves, but we can't do anything else. Well, that stinks. So I think what we'll have to do in order to test it is actually take out the webhook secret and just to leave it unsecreted. So there'll be no checking there. Boo. And we'll have to come up with a more creative way to do that. I'm not pleased with that. Okay. Well, this is the constraint. Sometimes you get constraints that you have to resolve. Okay. But I've convinced myself that all this stuff works. There's maybe, we're in the base file, webhook secret. Yeah. Maybe after we're able to save the hook, that will give us more settings that will let us set some auth. Ugh, that'll be awful if we have to deal with warnings every time just because SendGrid doesn't let us do that. Whether to warn if basic auth is not configured. For most ESPs, basic auth is the only webhook security, so the default is true. Warn? I can't imagine that they wouldn't permit this. There's no, so this is true for the SendGrid hook. So that tells me that whoever wrote this at least is of the opinion that basic auth is permitted for SendGrid. Still haven't seen it yet though. Where's it getting basic auth from? Get an email setting. Okay, that's the one that we are setting up. It's making sure that it's a string. It's wrapping it as a list. That's curious. Because right, because it has that rotation thing. So if it's not a list, it wants to treat it as a list. And if we don't have it, we're going to get a warning. Well, okay. Constant time comparison. But we're not going to have basic auth, so so all this validation stuff is going to be skipped. All right, well, validate. Nope, must be in here somewhere. Okay, I'm just going to trust that it's called somewhere, and I'm not going to look too deeply for it. And I'm pretty confident that we're now at a point where we could do the ngrok piece of this. And along the way, we'll hopefully encounter what we need in order to configure this properly. All right. We need to start the web server. Then we need to start ngrok. And I can't remember what we have to invoke here. Let's do ngrok h. So if we do, looks like if we do ngrok http, and then we can provide our port as I'm trying to make sure I understand, is this the public port or the port of our local server? Probably the port of our local server. So we're running this on port 5000. Well, I want to say, and if we get it wrong, we can just turn it off and try again. ngrok http 5000. All right, we've got 2 hours to do this. No, I'm going to be asleep in 2 hours, I think. The 3,000? 5,000, right? 5,000. So here we are. So ngrok is telling us everything that's set up, what version we're on, how it's going. And here, importantly, is our forwarding name. Let's copy that. And with that information, got to log into Cloudflare. Yeah, I appreciate the comment. I think my web server, I believe, is port 5000. And just to highlight it here, it's Gunnicorn. It's on port 5000 right there. And here we go. It's pointing. So forwarding this HTTPS traffic to HTTP:5000. Okay. Yeah, it's all good. I clearly got confused myself on this port stuff. So let's go to Cloudflare. I'm gonna have to, let me turn on my secrets again. I doubt Cloudflare is gonna still be logged in, but if it is, I'm pretty sure they were not good with like showing credentials about me. So we'll have to find the right page after I'm logged in and not show my address, and I don't know, there was a bunch of information that's like my personal, yeah. First thing you see, my personal email address. So I'm looking for my DNS stuff, and I'll talk through it because I can't show it right now. Going to domain registration, and I'm going to manage domains, and it shows journeyinbox.com. I'm gonna click manage. And there's a quick action things on the side that takes me to update DNS configuration. And I have a feeling, okay, it takes me to a totally different section. So I'm not pleased with like how to get to the actual, I don't know, maybe there's something else going on there. But looking at this now, I think there's nothing sensitive on here anymore. So let me bring this back. Okay, we are here. So we need to add, now Cloudflare is not calling it a naked domain, they're calling it the root domain. So we can add an A, a quadruple A, or a CNAME record for your root name so that Journey Inbox will resolve. So I think we need a CNAME record. So let's add a CNAME. Oh, okay. So we use @ for the root. This is just temporary. So CNAME, @ for the root. Journeyinbox.com is an alias, and this is actually going to be really close to, whoops, that is not correct. Really close to what we'll do for Heroku later on. Come on, terminal, come back. So this is what we want to have it resolve to. So copy this. I don't know why it didn't copy before. And then paste it in here. So journeyinbox.com is an alias of blah, 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 .ngrok.io. And I don't think we want this proxied. And we can use the auto TTL. And then this will get deleted. Once our ngrok thing is dead, it won't resolve to anywhere. And it certainly won't resolve once I stop my local web server. So now, where to go? What? Boo. Refresh. What's going on? That's not cool. That is not cool. We don't need a custom name server. It should be showing up in this list of CNAME records. There should be a 4th entry. Hey Jeffrey B, welcome back. Yeah, we're maybe at the culmination, assuming I can get to work, but we've been working on getting inbound email checking going, but we haven't deployed. So we're trying to do the local web server connected to ngrok, connected to Cloudflare, which will connect to SendGrid, and then, gosh, I think to test it, I'm going to have to like email with my email client to Journey Inbox. We'll see how this goes. But I am surprised. All right, let's try adding it again. Maybe it'll. I didn't see any error message, so this is what I'm confused about. So CNAME @ ngrok, which, and this message reads like what I want it to read. Journey Inbox is an alias of CF24 blah 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 ngrok.io, and so it's DNS only. Auto. Did I hit the? Oh, I hit the wrong button. Shoot. I didn't hit the save button. I hit add record. So I made this form go away. Oops. My fault. I don't know why this one has this cool icon and these don't. Maybe because it's root? What's this thing? Okay. So they're giving me this informational thing of why they're cool. CNAME records normally cannot be on the zone apex. That's a really confusing way of saying you can't normally use a CNAME record to do the root. Jeffrey, good question. So ngrok, in this case, is making it possible to resolve Journey Inbox. So if I configured this right, you should be able to go from Journey Inbox to ngrok. I don't think it can be an A record, because I think don't A records have to be IP addresses? Am I wrong on that? Y'all need to know I'm not like a DNS aficionado, expert, whatever here. Okay, here we go. A record is the root, but then you have to plug in an IP address. So CNAMEs are for aliases and that kind of stuff. So I think that's why we have to use CNAME in this context. And then I have no idea what a quadruple A record is. That could be, let's see what it says. Oh, IPv6 maybe, because it switched from 4 to 6 when I switched that. So I'm pretty sure CNAME's the right choice. We've got our ngrok session for 2 hours. So Jeffrey, getting back to your question. So now the way this should work, journeyinbox.com will now go to this ngrok long domain name here, which then over in my terminal, you can see it is hooked up right now to localhost port 5000, where I do my local development. And this should be listening for requests. Now, the reason we had to do this, and then the part that you missed earlier, is that SendGrid was not allowing me to add the actual webhook configuration. They're just giving a very generic bad request message, which is useless. And the best that I could deduce from the very few options that are on that SendGrid page is that it's because the route that I was putting was not available publicly on the internet. So I'm presuming what happened was they tried to go out to the URL that I told them, and they couldn't get there, so it didn't work. It's dawning on me just now, though, that I think did I start this web server with this commented out or not? I don't think it matters. I think we can stop this. It's not going to break the ngrok session. Ngrok will still try and make those calls when it can. So we're going to start this. I'm going to make sure this is saved over here, because this webhook secret's a problem. And it's going to throw an angry warning at us, which we'll have to figure out how to deal with later. And I want to say make. And so now our inbound parse endpoint should be listening on port 5000, which should connect to ngrok, which should connect to Journey Inbox. Which hopefully, if we come over to this page over here on the SendGrid stuff, and just for the sake of being back to like a clean slate, I want to get the parse page up, refreshed. I don't know that any of that stuff would be cached, but I don't want to hurt my odds here. And we're going to go to add host and URL. We're going to pick journey inbox. We're going to do an email, SendGrid inbox and inbound / and try and add it. Oh, you stinkers. That's not good. This is one of these scenarios where I don't know how to resolve this. If this doesn't resolve, I mean, the entire project that I've been building has hinged upon me being able to make an inbound parse endpoint. So this might be something that I need to write to the support staff on SendGrid and be like, what's the deal? And see if I can't get a response from them. Okay, so what we could test, actually, let's do this. Let's test. So we've been doing localhost here, and we checked that it didn't work. But what I want to do here for the moment is check on the admin. Again, this is only temporary, so I'm not worried about this being there a long time. So we've got our admin page here that loaded all this stuff up. Now, if ngrok is working as we expect, then I should be able to go to the admin login page. I want to take this route. Well, you know what? Let's just modify the link now. And we want to go to HTTPS, because ngrok is doing SSL termination, I think. And / journeyinbox.com. See how this works. Okay. Maybe this might explain why we're still getting failures on the inbound parse page, because what it could be doing is like, no way, I don't trust that SSL certificate. So I'm going to say advanced, and then, because we just configured this, y'all. So I'm pretty confident that nobody is doing anything nefarious on here. So I'm going to go advanced, and I'm going to say accept the risk and continue. Oh, okay. I don't know what this means. Tunnel journeyinbox.com not found. Maybe okay, maybe this little trick that we're trying to do with the CNAME cleverness is something that we have to pay for. And respect to ngrok for wanting to make money. So they're probably not doing name verification properly here, or not properly. Let's see what their help page says on this error. Well, I don't agree with that. An ngrok agent is definitely online. Yeah, I think it's just like a naming thing that we're really like playing with the edges of what ngrok supports. Okay, well, we tried. I think that was noble. So let's pause there, recollect on what we did, and consider the next steps, shall we? So I think where this leads me to conclude is that the next logical thing to do is deploy. Well, okay, maybe not. Sorry, I'm thinking. ngrok diagnose. Am I missing something? I think I just I killed the ngrok session though. I don't know if it was gonna give me the same one. Nah, it gave me a new one. So sorry, John, I missed your message there. ngrok diagnose. What is that going to do? Yeah, I was a little too quick on the start there. Diagnose, localhost. Yeah, so there's a very high probability that it could be me and not ngrok here. So let's just assume that I'm tired and making mistakes. But we can still consider like next steps. What should we do? I think with where we're at, I think it's reasonable to maybe test this out. Now it's going to be a little hard to test, because what should this handle inbound hook be doing? It should ideally be doing a handful of things. It should, as we talked about, should try and find the ID and then create a journal entry for that ID and match up the date. But I don't know how much of that we can realistically do until we see an accurate message payload come out of here, until I can put a debug spot on there and see what SendGrid is actually sending. It's going to be kind of, to some degree, guessing a little bit about what they have, and that just seems like a waste of time. So I think what I want to do next is follow through on this. And I want to have a thing that will have the site live, have it be at journeyinbox.com. I would set up the account associated with that for my own personal usage, or maybe I'll set it up for a test account initially so I don't have to clear some stuff out later. I don't know. But get that going, and then we can, with the printing, we should at that point be able to do some, the way Heroku works is that anything that's printed to standard out is like log messages, and there are some Heroku commands that can do log tailing. So we could start to play around with what we want to print. We could do a pretty print of the entire message and look at all of the attributes and get a true sense of what is in the payload that's coming back from SendGrid. And I'm frankly a little surprised. I mean, I guess SendGrid kind of tries to document some of that with this stuff, but this, I don't know. I still don't really understand. We're gonna get some headers, but you know, there's aspects of this that I would like to see, the message IDs, how we're gonna parse them, and I want to see how AnyMail parses this stuff, because even though we're seeing like the raw content that might come from these examples, there could be some extra parsing that AnyMail will do and kind of clean it up so that we don't have to think about those things. So it would be good to see it from like the Python perspective. And I think the best way to do that is going to go through kind of a few cycles of deploying the site and doing some like live debugging. That'll lead us down this interesting path of hooking up Heroku to the real thing. Got a real live production site. That'll be a good step to go through. We have to, along the way, configure all of those secrets that we were adding to this app have to be added here. I might even want to do, there might be a little bit of, okay, there's another pre-launch thing that I want to track, and I have it somewhere down here. I think I did. Sorry, I'm not seeing it right away. I must not have added it. Okay, let's add it. The other thing I was thinking of was a recommendation. So I mentioned this before, like, but the fact that we can see the admin page, like that's the admin page, is like a dead giveaway that this is a Django app. And I know I'm doing all of this publicly so people could figure it out anyway if they're new to go find this guy on YouTube, but I don't really want to make this trivially easy for some script kiddie to come and find out that this is Django and then try and a bunch of stuff to hack into it. So what I want to do is make the admin not very discoverable. And I'm going to do that by essentially a little bit of security through obscurity, and combine admin with a random key of some kind. And that way I'd be able to find it easily myself, knowing what the key is, and go through that. So there's a bit of configuration to adding a setting to make the path what I want, and it's not going to be hard work, but it's a step that I would like to take before we do actual deployment. So let's call this the admin random token in path. Yeah, that's a good call, John. The 2FA. So maybe, security through obscurity is convenient, and maybe I'm being lazy. But I think if I start at least with this much, this could get us. Because I don't want the payoff for you all to be like, okay, how much setup is it gonna do? But that'd be a good project. So let's set the bar as this is the thing that needs to get done, just to make it so it's not trivially easy for anybody to crack, to know more information about this than they should. And then I'll record. It's a good idea. 2FA for login. How doable is that? Might actually. With Django off, that might be an interesting thing. Although it's with the admin site, so I don't know. We'll see. And then let me actually change this to 2FA for admin login. Okay. So with that and the random token thing, I think that'll give me enough confidence to deploy to the real site. Let's put this with the milestone and track it as part of the launch thing. So we're really close. Well, we're closer here, and we're working on the SendGrid configuration, but we didn't get there. That's okay. Sometimes this stuff's a process, and then we haven't done the persisting. And then I talked about that ID stuff earlier. That will be a follow-on task. The earliest version of this is maybe I'll just have, I won't be able to really trust this until I get some of these ID things, because I want to get to this point where I can use the service regularly, have the prompts go out for me as a recipient, and then be testing this out, even though there's no user interface or any of this stuff. But you really got to get some of these things locked down, so I'm not getting. What I don't want is to have spam entries show up in my own personal journal. That's not cool. So that's the things I want to avoid. So we're not quite done here. We're like, if I could half check this box, I would. That's what we work through this evening. And we're kind of stuck until we deploy. So next time, which actually won't be next week. Next week I'm running the local Python meetup in my town. So I won't be able to join y'all. But the week following that, we should get back to this, and I think we'll be at this point where we will go through all of the deployment stuff to set up the runtime. We can set up the scheduler at that time, and then we can do that other task of doing the Heroku DNS, and then that will finally allow us to loop back to this inbound email processing. So I think all of those things will help get us to this point where we're really close to having a basic version of the service working, and then week after week I'll be able to tell you how it's going, if I'm actually using it, how I feel like it, and then we start to build out the features that will enable folks like yourself to sign up, get Stripe integration, get all of the actual pieces that will be required to make it a service that people can log in, trial, start paying for, and all of that. All right, y'all, that's gonna do it for me this evening. Thank you very much for joining. I appreciate the comments. If you do me a favor, put a like on this video if you could. That would be great help. Do want to say thank you to my patrons. You're welcome to either join AM with the regulars here on YouTube. I also am on patreon.com or Patreon at patreon.com/mblayman. And I want to thank my patrons over there. And just to be clear, the tiers there and on YouTube are the same. So if either's more convenient for you. But I want to say thank you to Rupert, Andrew, Dragos, Ryan, Patrick, Fred, Aaron, Philip, Miguel, Shivan, and Monty, who helped me buy equipment. And eventually I will get better better stuff to the actual, like, have a nice secret screen and all these other, there's a bunch of flash that I could add to make this more pleasant. And if you have any feedback for me, drop a comment below. Happy to try and answer questions offline, online but offline, not live, I guess. There's also a Discord, so if you want to go to my personal site, do I still have the link there? I think on the top I do. So here's my personal website at mattlehman.com, and this icon right here will take you to a Discord, which is the building SaaS with Python and Django Discord, and it's a pretty low engagement. That makes it sound negative. You're not going to get spam with a bunch of messages in that Discord, but you can ask questions, and I try and answer them when I'm not streaming live. So that's another way to get in touch with me if you want. So thank you all for joining in, and I'll see you in a couple weeks, and we'll get this thing live, and it should be fun. So take care.